I had the honor of getting to know her backstage. She is the CTO at Shopify. Brilliant keynote from Sandy Jeong. Everyone, give it up for Sandy. Thank you.
Okay. This is the coveted spot of me standing between you and lunch. So I am hopefully going to make this fun for you. Oh, that's okay. I don't need a chair. Okay. Maybe I'll sit if it gets a little bit intimate and cozy. But thanks for being here today. I'm Sandy Jeong. I'm a field CTO at Shopify. And my role at Shopify is to serve as a strategic advisor to brands who are going through a digital transformation. Prior to joining Shopify, I actually led a digital transformation on the brand side. I was at Glossier, a direct-to-consumer beauty brand that you might be familiar with. I led tech and e-com there. Also spent some time at Amazon and Microsoft in product and strategy roles. So I'm excited to talk to you today about unified commerce. Let's see if this works. Okay, let's start with a little bit of a market reality check. What's changed in recent years and what are we seeing that's actually working? So if we think back to, it's wild to think that the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, was already 6 years ago now. Time really goes rapidly, but also that feels like it just was yesterday. But pre-pandemic, brick and mortar really ruled, right? And there weren't many conversations around this concept of unified commerce. During the pandemic, obviously, most brands realized that they needed to be online, and they actually found significant value in finding a direct relationship with their consumers and getting that first-party data. Now, in this post-pandemic era, what we're seeing is that digital actually remains structurally higher. In the US, e-commerce now accounts for over 16% of retail sales, up from just over 10% in the pre-pandemic era. But I think what's more interesting than the data is how consumer behavior and expectations have really shifted post-pandemic. And now the digital conveniences that consumers experienced during the pandemic and the years that followed have now set that bar in in-store expectations. So stores now really have to earn the trip, and consumers have very high expectations when it comes to things like confidence and convenience and experience. So I want to tell a few anecdotes here to make this real for you. From a confidence perspective, consumers absolutely expect you to have accurate inventory and to offer things like buy online and return in store. So a little bit of an anecdote in my own experiences. I often will go into a retail store and ask an associate, hey, do you have this another size in the back of the store that you could pull out for me? I'm not seeing my store here on the floor. And some bored sales associate rolls their eyes at me and says, all I have is what's on the floor. Turn around and walk away. And it breaks my heart as a retailer because I know that could be a much better experience. And I was actually speaking to a retailer of a very high-end clothing brand just a few weeks ago at NRF. I don't know if any of you were at NRF recently, but they shared with me that they had a really big disconnect between their online and offline experiences. They had a customer who had spent 5 figures shopping online, which was not uncommon for them for a luxury brand. But this customer came into their local store and tried to return some items and completely was unable to. The manager was so apologetic because this was a valued customer. And so they said, you know what? Can you just leave the merchandise here with me? I promise I'll figure out how to return it and get your money back to your credit card. Here's my personal cell phone number. Can you just trust me? And can you imagine what a broken experience that is and what a trust-busting experience that is? Consumers expect you to be able to handle those experiences. They want convenience. Nobody wants to wait online in a store and wait behind a till for you to ring up transaction by transaction. They like that more mobile experience that we're seeing now. And they expect experiences. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more throughout the presentation, but the expectations of walking into a physical retail store are very different now. Consumers want to engage with your brand. I was out shopping with my husband at Todd Snyder. I don't know if any of you have been there, but he was checking out, and they offered him a glass of very high-end whiskey as just like a, hey, thanks for shopping with us. And it really stuck in his mind, and then he was pretty disappointed when we're walking into other stores and he's not getting that level of experience and service, right? You know, you want a glass of whiskey. I know, it's getting close to lunchtime. Okay, so it's easy to talk about customer experiences, right? But it's more difficult when you're an operator, like all of you are, and you're facing financial pressure. I don't know if any of you have had tough conversations with your CFO. I know I have, trying to look at margins and every initiative, and is it, hitting our bottom line or not? And I spoke to another retailer recently who told me they were really nervous about investing in physical retail because they weren't sure if it would be profitable. It makes sense, because how many of you have been facing profit and margin pressures in recent years? Okay, I think all of us have, because we've seen CAC increasing and skyrocketing in the last several years. Return rates are getting higher, shipping is getting more and more expensive, and promotion intensity is a very real thing. It feels lately like we're all in a race towards the bottom and over promoting, right? Compressing our margins. But from a Shopify perspective, where we're actually seeing brands succeed and win is when they are gaining operating leverage through things like unified inventory, driving higher repeat rates through a unified experience, and lowering service costs. We're going to unpack all of those things in the next 20 minutes or so. But to make it really real for you, you'll see here at the bottom of the screen, this is based on Shopify's own data. We are seeing that hybrid customers spend 43% more and repeat at a 7x higher rate, more than single channel shoppers. That's a really significant value that these hybrid customers are driving. Customers that are fluidly shopping between online and offline and different channels that you might offer. So how are you going to capture that value? The real unlock is when you stop seeing physical retail as a separate channel and you see it as part of a connected ecosystem of demand and supply. And to put a finer point on that, I really encourage you to be thinking about what is the strategic value of your physical retail stores in your brand's ecosystem. So I mentioned that I used to work at Glossier, and I was part of the senior leadership team there, and we spent quite a bit of time talking about this, debating what is the role of, as we're entering wholesale, how do we, show up as a brand there? What is the role of our brand.com? What is the role of physical retail? And for physical retail for Glossier, we actually decided that, physical retail is our way to drive experiences with our loyal consumers and to bring new customers into the experience of who we are as a brand. So we drove physical retail as an experience hub. So I don't know if you've been in a Glossier store, but we have dedicated footprint within the store to take a selfie. I live in the New York City area, and we have a room that looks like a New York City subway station, and you can take a selfie there, and it actually drives tremendous UGC from anyone who goes in through the store. We also had a claw machine. So if you spend above a certain dollar amount, then you get tokens to go and use the claw machine. Things that might seem like extraneous and why would I invest in something like that, it actually drives tremendous foot traffic and UGC and people traveling from all over to go experience your brand in real life. Now, revenue engine. I'm not talking about, just converting regular foot traffic that's coming in through your doors, but how are you driving higher AOV through your physical retail spaces? I was doing a little bit of research in our data warehouse at Shopify, and I found that POS sales, so sales in physical retail, have like a 9 to 10% higher AOV than online sales across all of our brands. So that's just an average. Obviously, it can vary by type of brand, but that's significant value that you're driving through things like assisted selling and clienteling. Fulfillment node. This is one that I think is pretty underutilized today, but is a tremendous value. So if you think about your physical retail stores, and you're not getting a lot of foot traffic on a weekday in the morning time. So the traditional things that you would do is optimize with store hours or staffing. But now we're seeing more and more brands using that physical retail space as a fulfillment node to fulfill from store and to shorten that time where you're shipping to the customer. And then the last one is data generation. This one is actually a really sneaky, powerful tool. And you think of data generation as a play in online, but there are ways that you can actually generate richer data in your stores. One example that I'll give you here is the picture here on the screen. This is a Shopify point of sale terminal, and Shopify has something called our Shop Network, and it's a network of 250 million plus users around the world that are recognized users by Shopify. They have a vaulted credit card, we know, their shopping history, and we know a lot about them. If one of those customers goes into your physical retail store and taps their credit card, they've never shopped with you before, but they're part of the Shop Network, we recognize them and pull up their email address. And then now that email is part of your CRM. So it's a powerful way to start building your database and start knowing more about your customers. So when you really do see physical retail as connected to your broader ecosystem, i.e. unified commerce, this is when EBITDA really starts to move, right? You're really driving bottom line in your business. And you can do that by pulling different levers that are connecting the dots and bridging in-store investments and then your bottom line. So just a few that I'll call out here is fewer lost sales. So my anecdote earlier about not being able to find my size in the store, that's a perfect opportunity for something like Endless Aisle. I really desperately want those sales associates to then redirect me to a POS terminal and say, hey, I don't have that size in store, but I can actually order it and have it shipped to your house for free in 2 days. Would you like me to do that? Absolutely. Then that's going to extend, or reduce the number of lost sales that you're getting. Lower fulfillment costs we've talked about, being able to ship from store and reducing split shipments. Lower returns costs. So buying online and returning in store is not just good for your customer, it's good for your business because then you're able to get that inventory back into your system quickly and then get it turned again and back into another sale. And you're also reducing that reverse logistics cost. Higher repeat rates. I'll have some examples to share with you around how you drive loyalty through these unified experiences and better personalization. And then lower service costs. Again, how are you leveraging your store associates to better service your online and offline customers? But how are you also automating things like where is my order and understanding what the customer has purchased online and in store? Okay, so customers are demanding these experiences. There's absolutely value, bottom line value for your business when you have a unified experience. So I'll just say store expansion is back, but only if it's integrated. It really works when your stores are inventory aware, customer aware, and digitally connected. But it absolutely breaks down when you have separate P&Ls. Your data is very disconnected, and you have policies like, hey, this return is not my problem. You bought that online. I can't help you in the store. And in my role at Shopify, I actually speak to executives on an almost daily basis about the challenges that they're facing. And these failure points, it's more common than you would think. Some of you might actually be thinking to yourself, oof, I'm in that second category, right? And that might be the case because of where you sit, where your business sits on this maturity model. So multi-channel is kind of where we were 10 plus years ago, right? This is when you were entering into different channels and you were, starting to dabble in marketplace and thinking about online. But those were all very separate initiatives. Your data was absolutely in separate systems, separate vendors. And then omnichannel has been the buzzword for the last 5-10 years. Everybody's trying to be omnichannel. But in the back end, because I'm a tech person, I can tell you how painful that is when your tech systems are disconnected, because you end up having to stitch together data to get any semblance of how much sales am I doing on the whole in a particular region, and let alone being able to service customers in a high touch way. And you end up with a lot of different integration points that lead to points of failure and a ton of tech debt. Unified commerce. So we're like 15 minutes in, and I'm finally going to give you a proper definition of unified commerce, okay? From Shopify's perspective, unified commerce means that you have a single brain, right there in the middle of my little diagram there, a single brain for your product, order, and customer data. And what I mean by that is that we're not stitching together a view of the customer based on all the different places that they have shopped. You've got one record, one Sandy that has shopped online with you or in your physical retail stores or in different channels like social shopping, and you know everything about this customer and you can service them in a more personalized way. You get much better operational efficiency in the back end when you have things like unified inventory and a unified view of your product. So it's a really significant shift in how you think about technology and your systems, right? So unified commerce, it really does unlock tremendous value. Bottom line value is what I'm talking about. You can do things to improve your customer experience, things like better personalization. Something that at Glossier we tried to train our store associates on is, ask the customer's name, maybe you can look up their profile, and you might say to them, I saw you recently bought this shade of blush online. We just got a new lip gloss that actually pairs really well with that. Would you like to try it on? That's how you start to drive that higher AOV. And, we're not talking about like really crazy personalization models, but even like simple things like that are driving real value for your customers and for your bottom line. Streamlined operations, being able to have real-time inventory across all of your different channels, unified analytics so you can optimize your spend, new demand capture. So this is one where I don't know if any of you have tried to enter new channels recently, like entering into marketplaces or trying to turn on TikTok as a channel. Those can be pretty heavy lifts when your systems are not unified, right? But in a unified world, you can actually move into those new channels really rapidly, even at the click of a button, say, yes, I want to start selling into a new channel. And then innovation. It's interesting because having sat in the operator seat, I know that innovation can kind of feel like a buzzword, a nice to have, like a pipe dream. We all want to be focused on innovation in our day-to-day jobs, but the reality is that you end up, overwhelmed with just managing maintenance and the day-to-day work, right? But innovation becomes a lot easier when you're in a unified system because you can move more quickly. You have different partners that are part of that ecosystem that you can, start to activate much more quickly. Okay, I think it's illegal in 2026 to give a presentation without talking about AI. So this is my one AI slide, okay? And I want to make it really real for you because when we talk about new demand capture on that previous slide about entering into social channels, AI channels are absolutely front and center in 2026 as the new demand channel. And why is that the case? Well, AI has been creating new commerce patterns because consumers are finding tremendous value in turning to large language models, LLMs, for product recommendations, right? Something like almost 20% of ChatGPT's queries are related to shopping. And that might not sound like a lot, but you've got over 800 million weekly active users talking to ChatGPT on a very regular basis, and 20% of those queries are related to shopping. Don't you want to convert those people if they're talking about your category, let alone your brand? And it makes sense because those LLMs get to know you. You can ask a very specific question. I'm going to Miami in the middle of winter, and none of my clothes fit, but I need something to wear for on stage. Not that that's a real scenario or anything, but you can get hyper specific and get pretty good results from an AI model like ChatGPT. And Shopify's own data is showing that this is becoming a serious channel that retailers need to be thinking about. Since this time last year, Shopify brands are seeing a 9x increase in traffic coming from AI sources and a 15x increase in orders originating from AI channels. So if you think about those numbers, 9x versus 15x, what that should tell you is that you're getting highly qualified traffic when they're coming from an LLM because they've already done that research and they've already passed through the consideration phase and they're ready to convert, right? And so now shopping is moving from scroll and click on a PLP to ask and buy. The consideration phase is really getting shortened now. And that can be exciting, but talking to a lot of executives at different retail brands, it's also a little bit terrifying. I'm being asked by, CMOs and CTOs, how do I make sure that I'm actually showing up in these answer engines, in these LLMs? And how do I make sure that what's showing up is actually accurate? Because, when a ChatGPT or a Gemini, they're scraping your website or crawling the web for information about your brand, you might end up with inaccurate or outdated data. You don't have real-time inventory. You don't have localized pricing. And all these things become a real challenge for retailers who are trying to get that demand and actually convert it. And what I'm excited to share is that Shopify recently announced agentic storefronts. This is the ability for any brand, whether you're on Shopify or not, to be able to push your catalog through Shopify directly into any of these AI platforms like ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot. Again, you don't have to be on Shopify to be able to do this, and then be able to send first-party data to these LLMs so that they have an accurate view of your product descriptions and your real-time inventory. All of your business logic carries over into the checkout, and so you're able to capture that demand that's right there. So I hope that excites you instead of scares you a little bit and starts to put into action some things that we're seeing in 2026. So I want to talk for a moment about a brand that is doing unified commerce really well. Because even when we're talking about things like shopping in AI channels, that is ultimately just another channel that we're unlocking through unified commerce. And how many of you are familiar with Mejuri as a brand? I think most of you. I'm actually wearing some of their pieces today. Mejuri was founded in 2013 with the idea that they wanted to disrupt the jewelry space. They didn't think that jewelry should be saved for special occasions or be gate kept by really high prices. And so they were a disruptor in the market, absolutely, and started to see success right away. But behind the scenes, it wasn't actually telling the same story from a technology perspective. I've spent quite a bit of time with their CTO, Rohit Nathani, and he shared with me that their tech was actually holding back their pace of innovation. They reached a point where they realized, you know what, our job is to sell jewelry, not to build custom tech, and we need to make a change. And it's a really familiar story because that's exactly what I went through at Glossier, and I hear it all the time from brands who realize that they're not able to meet the moment with changing times when their tech is holding them back. To give you an example of that, they had a really hard time with inventory sync. So oftentimes a customer would be in store and a stylist would sell that customer on a particular item. They would ring up the transaction, go to the storeroom, and not find the item there. Their POS told them that they had inventory, but then it's not actually in the building. And it would be such a broken experience for the customer and a loss of trust. So this was happening really frequently. From a data perspective, they had broken marketing attribution. So their ROAS was well below industry standards, and their stores themselves were very underutilized. So they made a change and moved over to Shopify's unified commerce stack, and they did it in 9 months for both their online store and their physical retail stores. And Rohit tells me that it was such a relief because he and his tech team stopped spending time on maintenance activities and started actually driving business value. And the business value was pretty immediate. They actually realized, 6 figures in lower annual costs from a TCO perspective, but their team was actually more efficient and able to produce more. Their site speed improved by almost 2x. And then they started to see real revenue gains. They partnered with Shopify and Global E to expand internationally, and they saw a 20% increase in their international business. And even just in APAC alone, they saw 95% year-over-year growth. So really significant. From a unified perspective, they started doing ship from store, which was generating millions of dollars in revenue for them. And then they were doing things like email cart to capture first-party data, to try to not lose that sale in store, but convert that customer online, and then still be able to attribute that sale to the store associate, and then give that store associate commission, even when it converts online. And then it's cut off here on the screen, but their marketing attribution improved significantly now that they had an omni marketing attribution model, and they were able to optimize their spend when it was previously really inefficient. So I told you that I'm wearing some Mejuri pieces today. I was actually in their store in the New York City area on last Saturday, and I had some Shop Cash, which is like a rewards that you have in the Shop app, and I really wanted to use it. So then the store associate so seamlessly said, oh, just place the order, or she sent me a link to the specific bracelet that I wanted. And then she said, just click there, place the order for pickup in store. Immediately she said, okay, I got your order. I'm going to go fulfill it now. And it was so seamless, and it really exemplified, this online, offline capability, and being able to convert me right on the spot. It's a beautiful bracelet. It's right here. What I want to leave you with is hopefully what I've shown you today convinces you that unified commerce is not, a pipe dream. It's really a necessity today in today's landscape. It allows you to meet the customer's expectations, drive bottom line, and then actually grow and innovate into the future. So I'm going to give you some practical tips here as we close out. These are the things that I would encourage you to demand from your commerce platform. Obviously, I work at Shopify, would love all of you to be talking to us, but I'm realistic, and I want you to be demanding these things for the sake of your own growth and your own brand from whatever platform you work with. Unified commerce primitives. I hope you know now the difference between omnichannel and stitching together data, and then true unified commerce, where you have a single brain for your product, order, and customers. Extensibility, the ability to customize on top of a platform with ease, making sure that it's reliable and secure, that you have strong ecosystem depth so that you can easily connect to other parts of your backend, and that you have great operator tooling so your day-to-day work is not so toilsome. So I hope you learned something today about unified commerce, and we do actually have a booth just outside of these doors if you'd like to learn more about what Shopify has to offer. So thank you for your time.